Welcome to the Faithworks podcast. I'm Beck Ewing. This is Paul Watson, my co-host. And today we're going to be talking about the subject, the Unapologetic Life, the 7 categories of Christian apologetics. I'm going to be talking about different aspects of apologetics that perhaps people have not even thought about. Other things that are in life that are designed to be apologetic. In other words, showing people who God is and in ways that we haven't thought of before. Because this is what apologetics actually is.
Okay.
Apologetics is a way of revealing God to people in a particular area that is a barrier to them so that they can be free to be able to respond appropriately to the claims of Christ and the working of the Holy Spirit. So what happens is most people who don't know God and they're exposed to God and they don't respond right away, or they seemingly are, conflicted, it's because there's a barrier. There's something that is in their thoughts or in their life that they're wondering and mulling about that keeps them from responding to Christ, that keeps them from saying yes to the Holy Spirit and letting the Holy Spirit have free reign and bringing them to salvation.
Okay.
Now, these barriers can look like different things. And so what apologetics does is helps remove that barrier, answer that place of uncertainty and doubt, so that the person will says, well, now that barrier is gone, let me hear then about this Christ. Yes, yes to the Holy Spirit. Now he can be more free to work in a person's heart and life. We have our normal understanding of what apologetics is, like I said, is evidential or worldview apologetics, which is, evidences of the physical evidences of the Bible, legal evidences of the Bible, intelligent design, what are the evidences of that? So those typical ways. And so in other words, the reasoning, behind, Christianity. But we don't always think about the other ways. Since we understand that apologetics are about removing barriers, there are other things that we can do. There are other areas of life that are apologetics to people. The way that we live, the way that we act, the way that things are working out in the world. There are other ways to live out apologetically in your life to reveal God to people. So how we're going to go through these is talk about the barriers and what people need to see through that and what we can do in these apologetics. Okay. So the first one is we've already talked about it, is the evidential worldview apologetic. So the barrier is that, as we know, people are out there and they're hearing from the universities and education and our culture all the time that Christianity doesn't make sense, that the Bible's full of mistakes, that Jesus didn't even claim to be God, that, all the, and evolution is true, and therefore there's no need for a God. They are hearing all of these things as they go out there. And unfortunately, and we're going to talk a little bit about this later on, are some of our smartest, people ahead of our educational systems buy into this false worldview. And so they're having a lot of times choosing between their professor that seems to be a really smart guy and Uncle Joe in church with a flannel graph pointing to, the world and say, God created the world in 7 days, and they're having to choose between those two things. And it really creates a barrier. It really creates the idea. And so what the point is that people need to know that God makes sense. They need to know that that belief is reasonable, because people are not going to believe if it just seems like nonsense or all the evidence is stacked up against it. At least they're going to have a really tough time believing when that is the case. So, because there's a difference between saying, I'm not sure, or I don't completely understand aeronautics, but I'll get on the plane. There's a difference between saying that and saying, my goodness, the plane's wings are made up of inflatable floaties. I don't know. I don't think this is going to fly.
Not gonna work.
It's like I'm no astrophysicist, but I don't think that's going to work. So
Right.
we want to show that our wings are not inflatable floaties. We want to show them that it's a trustworthy thing for them to do that. So what do we need to do? We need to be available for conversations. And in these conversations, be patient and calm and humble. And we need to know the truth. We need to know the evidences of why we believe. And that, no, I know that they said over there that we come from monkeys, but have you thought about the law of thermodynamics and how that just doesn't, evolution cannot even begin to fit within even our current scientific paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have to, so you do so in a way that helps remove those barriers. And one of the resources I'd love to give people out there is a guy named Ravi Zacharias and his ministry, Ravi Zacharias International Ministries, RZIM. And it's wonderful. He goes around to universities and talks to people all the time about apologetics, and he holds forums. So he speaks, and then afterwards he lets people come up to microphones, give their questions, and he is so kind and entreatable and thanks people for their questions and answers them where they are and gets at the core of what their question is. He tells a story, I heard a story lately about this. So this is proving about sometimes you just need to remove a barrier and then God works and lets them come into work.
Okay.
There's this one guy who came up to the microphone. And of course, again, you have to think of universities that have a lot of this like deconstructionist, there's no meaning, there's no truth or anything. And he stands up and he says, everything in the universe is meaningless. And Ravi says, that's not true. He said, yes, everything in the universe is meaningless. Everything is meaningless. And in Ravi Zacharias, I could prove to you the fact that the whole universe is not meaningless. And he says, okay, well then prove it. He said, is what you just said meaningless or meaningful? You just said the whole world is meaningless. So is what you said meaningful or meaningless? Because if it's meaningful, then there's meaning in this world. If it's meaningless, you really didn't say anything, so just sit down. And of course, everyone's like, whoa, or whatever. So, and he didn't say it in a mean way, but just to kind of point out, like, hey, even what you just said can't even be true within your own paradigm.
Right.
And so he said afterwards, I was walking out the back, and this same guy was marching back and forth in the back of the place, muttering to himself, what I said was meaningful. Then there's meaning. And if there is not, then even that was meaningless. Like he's just like going back and forth himself. And he said the next service that they had there at the place of where they're at, with the altar call for people, he was the first one at the front on his face before God.
Wow.
Because once he removed that barrier, now the Holy Spirit can come in and work.
Right.
And so that's what we're trying to do. So that's the first one.